All right, welcome on in everyone to another episode of First CSP, the channel dedicated to bringing you the first council shoulder patch issued from each council in Scouting America, both past and present. Today we're going to take a look at West Michigan Shores 266. This council was originally formed in 1975 as the merger of Grand Valley and Timber Trails and lasted up until 1995 when it changed name to Gerald R. Ford 266. We've got several patches to take a look at today. All of them will be versions of the first issue T1. Now, even in older collecting guides, the first issue was never separated into multiple variants. So all of these appear to just be different production runs of the T1. So starting with a couple here on the patch table, the T1 is defined with a red border, white background, and red letters. The notable difference between T1 and then T2s was the T2 is going to add a fleur-de-lis. There are several variations of T2 that have either type 1 or type 2 fleur-de-lis. I'm not going to look at any of those today, just sticking with T1s, but we've got a bunch to take a look at, mostly defined by the twill. There's some differences in the back, but they are all plastic backed as well. These two, based on the base twill being a little more pronounced, a little more rough, I think would probably be the older ones, but it does kind of enter a discussion that's somewhat interesting for us from a collecting standpoint. Is for a very long time, our primary concern with our collection that we highlight here on the channel was to collect the first issue, and so once we had a first issue, we moved on. When we've moved in over the last year into the realm of making YouTube videos and presenting these first issues, we're finding so often that the first issue, when it was a regular issue and intended for uniform wear, obviously was going to sell out at some point. They'd have to reorder at the scout shop, so they'd be able to provide them for uniform wear for the scouts of that council. That if that was the first issue, oftentimes there are multiple production runs, and those are never generally tracked in any way in collecting guides, especially when there's not noticeable variation. Sometimes if, say, the brown of these birds would come back different, they'd say, okay, one's an A and one's a B. But many times, in West Michigan Shores is a great example, is when they did a new order, a new production run. It looks close enough, so they're just all T1s. But we can see some differences when we look closely. So let's take a look at these first two, again with a more pronounced twill. The difference that really sticks out to me here, the browns for the deer and the bird look pretty similar. The fish look similar. Color looks good on the lake. Slight difference in these greens. We get a darker green here on the second one. You get a little bit of a difference in the cut, but that can happen within a single production run. So oftentimes I don't look at letter spacing to the border as a definitive justification that you're looking at two different production runs. I look at details within the patch, which I would expect to be relatively consistent. And one of the main things that also jumps out besides these green colors is the distance from the deer to the tree. Look how much closer this is. Usually I think that setup would be consistent across an entire production run. So when we see that as a difference, otherwise these patches look very similar to me, I would say that these then look to be two different production runs. Now again, because the differences here are not tracked, we never really know which one is quote unquote older, and it doesn't quite matter. And for most collectors, that's not a big deal. You will occasionally find an individual collector of a council that, say, it was their council growing up. They know the council well, and they will know the order in which they were produced. We saw that in the video that we did a little while ago that was highlighting our update for Cape Cod and Islands. So an individual council collector knew exactly when those runs were produced and was able to give some description differentiating when they came out. Both these going to be plastic backed. The plastic is relatively smooth. We'll see some definition in some of the next ones that we'll take a look at. So again, all these, they're both using red lock stitching. There's no difference there. But I believe, again, based on the 12, these are probably some of the older ones. Let's take a look at one of the next ones. This one has a relatively smooth twill by comparison. So we've got the left facing twill here, and both the first ones that we looked at were left facing twill. This is a rather smooth or non-directional twill. On this one, when we look at the back, it's also a bit longer. Left to right. Also a plastic back. Let's see if there's any difference. My label's falling off. A little bit of a difference. You get almost kind of a larger waffling pattern in the press on this plastic back, whereas this looks more uniformly smooth. So that's one way it looks a little different. Obviously, the border stitching is, perhaps the lock stitching is a bit brighter on this one than it is on the others. And those factors would generally lead me to assume, again, that it's maybe a bit newer as far as production, but there's no guarantees there, and they're all T1s. Again, most people probably would not even care. We've got one more to compare as well. And this one has right-facing twill. So we looked at two left, one right, and one pretty smooth nondescript. This one also looks a bit bigger than the first ones that we've seen. Stitching on the lettering looks maybe just a bit thinner. Obviously, we also get a darker green. This looks a bit closer in green to the other one we had up at the beginning. So these are the first two stacked on top of each other that we saw at the beginning. These go with more of a hunter green together. And again, this now has the twill going the other direction, which would again signify another or a different production run. Taking a look at the back here, also we get kind of that more patterned kind of honeycomb or waffly pattern on the black plastic back, which would indicate it's obviously not the same production run. The later two that I've shown here, I would hazard a guess, are newer productions than these first two that we showed off that were stacked. But again, who knows? And this by no means is necessarily exhaustive on the number of T1 production runs that existed for West Michigan Shores. I just don't know, because again, those things are not tracked. But I always find that it's interesting if we have those in our collection, or we've been able to add those to our collection, to bring them to you so that you can see them for yourself. And it's, again, just adds something interesting, in my opinion, to the depth of display that we do here on YouTube on our channel for CSP. With that, if you happen to know more about West Michigan Shores, or you've got twills that look different from all of these four, by all means, drop it in the comments, let us know. If you'd like to send us a picture, we do always have our X account, which is linked in the description of every video, where if we get images or descriptions from other collectors, we're able to post images on that we can highlight for people. We don't post a lot on the Twitter account, on the X account, but when we get stuff, it is there. You can always go back and look at what's been posted there as well. I want to thank you all for tuning in today. We'll be back again tomorrow with another brand new First CSP. We hope to see you then. Till then, hope you guys have a great rest of your day.